Hi, everyone. Today, we are bringing you the second installment of our 5-part fall preview series. Chris Rosen and I are joined today by returning guest Tyler Coates, and we're going to look at the award season slates for 3 perennial Oscar contenders, all of them indie labels owned by major studios. There's Focus Features, Sony Pictures Classics, and the only one of these 3 to have ever won Best Picture, Searchlight Pictures. We'll get into how they differentiate themselves from each other and the more upstart indie distributors, what they have on deck this year, and what we expect from their award season strategies in general. After that, you'll hear my conversation with Stephen Graham, who is the creator and star of the breakout Netflix series Adolescence, nominated for a whole ton of Emmys, including for Stephen Graham as lead actor. He is a really lovely conversation, so you'll want to stick around. And as a reminder, before we start, Prestige Junkie After Party is live. Please join us there. It's a subscriber-only hub for even more award season conversation, where you can also see full video versions of this very podcast you're listening to. Hopefully, we'll see you there. I am Katie Rich, and this is the Prestige Junkie Podcast. Tyler, it's so good to have you back here. And now that we're triumvirate with Chris, there's just so many more award seasons hot takes to throw out there. So thank you for coming back to join us.
Well, thank you for having me. And I feel like we're back in a real Oscar season, pre-pandemic.
Ooh.
Number of titles. There's just so many movies coming out. Everyone has so much. So
that's a good take. I hadn't thought about this, about last year's having been low, because it felt pretty busy. But you are right that the breadth of what we're looking at is pretty extensive.
Yes.
Do you feel, I asked David Canfield this last week too, when he was our guest, setting aside the slates that we're going to get into right now, how are you feeling about the season in general?
I'm really excited about it. I think that again, when we have a lot of big name auteurs coming out with new films, there's a lot of studio presence, which is, as we all know, is good for business. But yeah, I think it seems like a really wide variety of stuff this year that I'm excited. I mean, I've seen almost nothing, so yeah. There's a lot to watch. I'll be driving across town all of September and October, I think, to see everything on the West Side. But I'm excited. It's been I don't know. I'm just there are a lot of movies I'm really excited about this season.
Yeah, you probably hear we do. People, you're wait, they showed that to you? And then you get to hear vague rumors about people seeing stuff that you won't get to. And it's a real FOMO time of year.
Oh, yeah. There's, I know people who are on, programming committees for film festivals, or just doing long lead stuff for press. And then there's me, and it's just I can help you in some way. That's sort of the only pitch I have. Let me see everything soon so I can get started and help you figure out what you need to do too.
I have sent a wide variety of emails that just say, please show me your movie, please. Please? Although for today's things that we're talking about, I'm looking at it, there's a couple of things that were at Cannes earlier this year that we're going to talk about. One movie that was out in theaters, but a lot of stuff that basically nobody has seen. So I think we're all kind of starting in the dark here. Chris, do you want to do the honors of talking about the concept of these indie labels owned by studios and why it makes sense to kind of clump these together? The idea was to talk about everyone who's won Best Picture, so that's Searchlight. But it does kind of go hand in hand with Focus and Sony Pictures Classics when you're talking about award season, right?
Yeah, these are the indie studios within the studios, basically, right? So Searchlight Focus, Searchlight obviously owned by Disney, Focus by NBC, Comcast, Universal, whatever it is now, and Sony Pictures Classics by Sony. And in the past, these used to be maybe studio movies that have now matriculated to these mini labels within the studios.
Well, you say matriculated it's a graduation out of it, but it's more you stay over here, we can't handle you.
Yes, definitely. Because they just don't. These studios are not equipped to do this anymore, right? And so these studios are able to release the filmmaker kind of adult dramas that we used to love and see more of that are now here in these mini majors. But I am curious to see, like you said, only Searchlight has won, and I'm curious to see, especially with some of these labels this year, they have a lot of titles, and how will they get these in? That's my big thing for all of these, basically, is how is there room for some of these movies to make the cut?
Yeah.
Sorry, Searchlight won for Nomadland, right?
And Shape of Water. If we're doing the last 10 years, we've got, they have the 2 champs in the past 2 years, which, I wanted to start by talking about Searchlight anyway. So, Tyler, do you want to talk about why Searchlight is the one that's won? They did have a run there where it seemed like they were the most dominant force when it came to these Best Picture campaigns.
I think that there's the prestige associated with that bumper, at least when it was still Fox Searchlight. I think it's a recognizable mini studio. But yeah, it is interesting to think of them as the only one of this group who's won, and they've won twice. I mean, Nomadland, that whole year, I kind of consider with an asterisk on it because it was unlike any other. I think if the pandemic hadn't hit, there would have been a lot of different outcomes there. Yeah, I think it's interesting that Searchlight is the one with the kind of, I don't know, best results. But I mean, they always have like strong contenders. I feel like they're always, even Focus is racking up, nominations at the very least.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, all of these guys kind of like really pull their weight. I mean, all three of these, Sony Pictures Classics often has smaller films, but then they swoop in and win Best Actor for Anthony Hopkins. Like, they all have a weight there. But I do think of, I think Focus and Searchlight started around the same time as studios in the mid 2000s, and Searchlight kind of defined this like Little Miss Sunshine, Juno, like kind of like funky Sundance thing that honestly, like A24 and Mubi and Neon have kind of run with, and Searchlight was really the OG in that space. And it's kind of interesting, managing to win Best Picture with The Shape of Water is no small feat, but it's interesting to see how they kind of maintain that identity when you've got these younger studios kind of following their playbook and taking it to a new era.
Absolutely. And I think, I do think that the A24 Neon, there is a sort of, well, A24 is its own beast. The branding and like the kind of just Gen Z cinephile branding around it, like they have
millennials too.
Content.
All right?
They have millennials count. Too. Yes. Yeah. We can. Yeah. We have some influence, but no. I mean, I think that A24 feels, and even Neon too, like they get kind of grittier material than Searchlight does. Searchlight, I think of Searchlight, the Bob Dylan movie, which it is like kind of funny that like they're doing the Bob Dylan movie and then 20th Century has Springsteen. I think that there's something to be said about.
I got an email. I wrote something about Deliver Me From Nowhere and got an email from them being like, it's actually a 20th Century movie. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. I made the mistake. But like, can you blame me for making that confusion?
I mean, it's sort of the exact same thing we did last year. Just, I guess one gets the grown-up studio behind it. Especially this year, it's an interesting year because like, it's not a huge slate. So, and like even the slate I don't see it as like, oh, these are like the campaigns that we're going to see. Like The Roses, for example, which I think of as kind of just like a fun comedy starring two Oscar-nominated people and one winner, I guess. But, that seems very much like, a Jay Roach remake of War of the Roses, and that's going to just be like... That's what it is,
actually. It doesn't just seem that way. It's in fact.
Yeah, exactly. It's an audience pleaser, yeah. It's still early on the West Coast, technically. My brain is still half-formed. But, Bradley Cooper, which just today was announced as the closing night at New York Film Festival for Is This Thing On? I think that obviously he's like the Lucci of the Oscars at this point. He's been nominated across so many categories, and they won't give him one. And I feel like of their slate, that's the one that I could see having the biggest reach in terms of awards.
Yeah, that one is super intriguing. And yeah, as you said, as we record this, it just was announced for New York Film Festival. I think, I had talked to Searchlight a week or two ago, and they were very cagey about whether it would even be out this year. And now it's confirmed. It's coming out this year. They haven't confirmed a release date for it. But I mean, Chris, what do you make of that closing night New York Film Festival slot for this movie? Like, we know Bradley Cooper loves Lincoln Center. Leonard Bernstein still haunts the hallways probably. But as an award season play, does that make sense to you?
I guess it does. It seems like the movie is not going to be finished for Telluride, right? That was the idea, or at least that I saw that online, that like it's not ready yet. I think they wrapped filming like in the spring, right? And so this is the earliest they could get it somewhere. New York Film Festival, I feel like, is hit and miss certainly with its awards bona fides. As if you're launching there, it's not like a slam dunk. That said, I also, just as a sidebar, I think it's really funny that Bradley Cooper is so associated with Philadelphia, and his last two movies are these really deep New York movies, like how they're selling Is This Thing On as like a great deep dive into the New York comedy scene. I'm like, what? Why not Philly? I don't know. He loves Philadelphia. He's like Mr. Philadelphia.
Chris, what do you want?
It's very funny to me.
Elementary.
But I do think it's interesting. I think this one will be interesting to see for me because Maestro had so much expectations. Not just it had a target on its back because it was Netflix and like people are always going to be coming for those Netflix frontrunners, but also that the anticipation for that was so big, and like him playing Leonard Bernstein, all these things. This is such a smaller movie. He's obviously not really even in it. He's not mentioned as in the cast. I think he might have like a small cameo, right?
Yeah.
He's kind of in it. But like, this is Will Arnett's movie, it seems, with Laura Dern and like and a bunch of supporting people. I don't know. I could see this being a good launching pad for it, especially like we were saying before we started here and even during. This is such a great time of year because you don't know. Everything is possibilities. So right now we're expecting every movie that opens at Venice and Telluride and
Huge
TIFF
hit,
to be
obviously.
great. Everything is going to be great. All these movies are going to work. And by the time we get to the end of New York Film Festival, we're going to know those didn't work. And so then there was maybe an opportunity for this to come in with Bradley Cooper. And is this the one that gets him an Oscar after all these nominations that he's had? I don't know. But, you know, stranger things have happened.
Is it the only world premiere at New York? Because After the Hunt is there, and then the Jarmusch movie is there. So it's really their big splashy world premiere this year, I think.
Yeah, I don't think, unless they add a centerpiece gala or something else that's late. But I don't even know what that would be. Maybe Marty Supreme, I guess, is the last one of these, like, awards movies that has not been scheduled for any festival.
Well, Deliver Me From Nowhere also, right? But we kind of thought
that I'm assuming that's a Telluride. So I'm just going to assume that's going to be there.
Cooper is such a Telluride guy.
And I think that'll play. I think that'll play New York too, because I think that from what I hear, Springsteen is going to be doing a lot of work on that, and I think that there's going to be, you know, he'll perform somewhere at a film festival. I guarantee.
Is he from the New York area? Do you know, Tyler? Does he have any like roots in the tri-state area in any way? I'm not sure if that's been clear over the course of his life. Yeah, so we jumped ahead to Is This Thing On, which we will get a look at, and I guess early October is when that New York thing is. But there's another Searchlight title coming to Toronto, which is Rental Family, which was really not on my radar until very recently. I just like missed that it existed at all. It's Brendan Fraser's real post The Whale movie. You know, he was in Killers of the Flower Moon. That's a small part. And directed by Hikari, who broke out with Beef, which is really interesting because Beef directors are just everywhere right now. I wrote about this a little while ago in my newsletter. It does feel like it has TIFF Audience Award hopeful written all over it. And after The Life of Chuck, I don't want to say, like, Life of Chuck is not going to be the thing that breaks the Toronto Audience Award winner streak. I think that's going to continue going. But I wonder about that one as an audience play versus an awards play.
I'm very bullish on this movie for the exact reasons you said, Katey, in your newsletter so eloquently, and then right there as well. It does seem like the premise alone is basically is Brendan Fraser's character is an actor who comes into a family who has gone through a trauma, I believe is like maybe the
and he's like an American living in Japan, right. So like you know, big tall Brendan Fraser living in Japan is like a culture clash kind of thing.
I could see this being a very great audience play for them. An audience award, it's certainly top 3 probably, right, at TIFF, unless it doesn't work at all. But it does seem like that type of movie to me. And then with Searchlight, like you said, hearkening back to those kind of crowd-pleasing, like Juno and all those movies that they had in the 2000s, Little Miss Sunshine, this is kind of like in that vein and pushes it through as like the Searchlight Best Picture nominee. No disrespect to the great Bradley Cooper. And Is This Thing On?
Oh, wow. I'm not sure if I'm going to stand for this Bradley Cooper slander. A Star is Born gave me a lifetime membership,
I love Bradley Cooper. I'm just saying, like, in terms of their Best Picture plays and like what could be like a great return for the studio. I mean, obviously they had Complete Unknown last year as well, but like I think this is the type of movie that I could see playing in award season. And like you said, Katey, not on your radar, not on my radar until recently. And that helps too, because we've been talking about a lot of these movies for months, even though the Oscar season is not even started yet. And
even though most normal people do not know that Jay Kelly exists, nor should they.
Correct.
I have to say, Oscar season has started because I went to my first FYC event on Friday.
Oh, that's right. What was it for again?
For Train Dreams. I mean, Netflix called it Friends and Family, so maybe I'll stick with that phrasing. But it was at CAA, and all of the players were there. So,
so to me, I'm like, this movie could be a surprise then, and then that helps too. And I think that works in its favor.
And I think TIFF delivers that kind of surprise contender. I mean, Fabelmans was kind of an obvious one, but American Fiction kind of really exploded out of TIFF, and that really started that campaign from there.
Yeah.
So I think
I think of Holdovers too, which I guess is the same year as American Fiction, but like that was just like it played so well. And I think sometimes when you've got these like higher concept movies or something that feels like it could be more of a dramedy, when you see it in that like really ebullient TIFF audience, I think it really helps boost them in that way. And Rental Family seems like it, even if it's like more of a dark movie than like a high concept comedy, it could work in that same way.
Right. Yeah.
What do we make of Searchlight slate being relatively small? Like that's 2 movies that we have talked about right here. Do we think they're going to pick something up? Is the Roses going to be more of a contender than we think? I mean, they only had a complete unknown really in the hunt last year, so it's not uncommon for them. But, compared to Neon, which we talked about 6 movies last week, it is small.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in the last few years, Searchlight, and I would say all 3 of these kind of, indies within the studios have had smaller slates compared to, Neon and A24 last year alone just had so much. And, Netflix this year is much bigger than their slate last year. So I think it's just looking at the field of competition and being okay, we should focus. Let's have a fewer eggs to put in our basket, because I do think that, especially with A24 and last year and Neon the year before, sometimes they bite off much more than they can chew, So, we saw that 2 years ago with Neon, where because France didn't pick Anatomy of a Fall, they had to put all of their efforts behind that, and that kind of hurt Origin and Ferrari and those kind of films. And then last year, A24 really, The Brutalist kind of had to be their focus. And then, their other films kind of Sing Sing, for example.
Justice for Sing Sing.
The one that I will always talk about. It kind of hurt those. So I think that might be part of the strategy here, is just kind of take it a little easier when your competition has so much, and those campaigns can get kind of watered down.
Yeah. What do you think, Chris?
I think that the other thing too is Searchlight is a lot different now, because we saw Searchlight used to be run by David Greenbaum, right? And then he left and he was promoted into Disney live action. We're talking about it, Deliver Me from Nowhere. That I think was his first. So it does feel like a Searchlight movie, probably because it would have been if he'd not been promoted to 20th Century, because he picked it up. I think that was his first acquisition as leading 20th Century Studios. And so now Searchlight, no disrespect to the great people there, it does feel what is it now, I guess? What is a Searchlight? We were saying, we knew what a Searchlight movie was, but the slates the last few years have been a lot more diminished. They had a Real Pain last year, right? And Night Bitch. Those are their other 2 big ones with a complete unknown. But the year before, obviously, All of Us Strangers, right? And Poor Things were that year. So I don't know. They have every year a couple of movies, but it does feel to me like they're just not as positioned to gobble up things. I don't even know what they would acquire, in terms of acquisitions, what would they acquire? What is what would be a Searchlight movie that they could acquire out of Venice, I guess, or even Toronto that comes out this year?
You're asking me to know what's on the Toronto and acquired list. I don't know yet.
Yeah, and I think that I would say the same thing about 20th Century Studios. I don't, what is their brand identity at this point?
It felt like that was going to disappear as a brand name for a while there. And
I think that's Disney's, it's one of Disney's arms. So it's you have Avatar, which, is obviously part of its IP that they own there. But, that studio has always felt kind of these are the big blockbusters that we're doing, when I think of the fanfare and the imagery of the logo, from back in the day. So, and they have a really limited slate too. We don't see a ton from them. I think that it might be just that their priority right now is TV.
Oh boy.
And so film
You're not allowed to say that on fall preview.
I guess to put a positive spin on that, just to put a positive spin on this though, with less titles, it's a greater chance to get these movies a lot of attention in the awards race, right? So that's the other option, I guess I would say.
And they don't have to do that much with Avatar. That's going to print out money for them. It's going to get the VFX nomination. Kind of the expected technical stuff, and maybe it'll get a Best Picture. 3 for 3.
I'm counting on it. We'll do studios next week, so I'll get to show my Avatar hot takes then.
But so then really the stuff that they have to campaign around is Deliver Me from Nowhere. And again, I think if Searchlight, really has 2 movies to campaign, because The Roses doesn't really feel beyond maybe Golden Globes. Maybe it is.
Globes
maybe
are right there. Who knows?
Maybe they are brilliant in it, and it's going to be, but it doesn't seem to me like Prestige. It seems like a fun comedy with really good actors in it.
That's my greatest hope.
And I think they probably think, obviously with the release date, they obviously think that too, right? If it was a serious contender, it would not be coming out over Labor Day weekend. I just don't believe that.
So to move on to focus features, which is, the next one on the list, it does have a little bit more of a robust slate here. And I do think focus is interesting. Like last year, they were in the Oscar race with both Conclave, which I think came relatively close to winning Best Picture. It was in there at least, and Nosferatu. Like those are really like two very different sides of the same coin, which is fascinating. Like when we're talking about identity, like Focus, I think has a pretty strong one, and it's been hanging in there for around the same time as Searchlight. As we said, it has never won Best Picture, which is increasingly feels like a crime. Like I'm ready for them to make up for it.
I mean, when you think of like Tar too, like that, that is a great focus features film that I think in hindsight should have done better than it did. But
yeah. I mean, the original sin goes back to Brokeback Mountain losing Best Picture, and then versus trying to get back on course.
Sort of like the curse, the crash curse.
Basically. But their slate for this year, I'll just run down it very briefly. I put the Phoenician Scheme on the list. I'm not sure if you talked to them that they would be super focused on it. It was not received quite the same way a lot of Wes Anderson is, but he had his big Oscar breakthrough once. We're waiting to see if it happens again. And then Anemone, the Ronan Day Lewis movie that I don't think is on any festival lineups yet, which is very strange to me, and I'm not sure if that's going to change. Two big ones, Bugonia, the Yorgos Lanthimos movie, and Hamnet, the Chloe Zhao movie. We'll talk a lot about those. And then the Craig Brewer movie, Song Sung Blue, coming out on Christmas with Kate Hudson and Hugh Jackman. Cannot wait. Not sure what to take there.
I have to say, I saw that. I saw Song Sung Blue on Monday.
Wow.
Okay.
Very early. I don't know what I can say.
I'm sure you can't say anything.
Well, I can. I mean, I don't think they'll be mad if I say I liked it. So
No, they wouldn't be mad if you said you liked it.
I liked it. I went in. Again, I was like a Craig Brewer film about a Wisconsin Neil Diamond band starring Hugh Jackman and Kate Hudson. This is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. And I think it's a real crowd pleaser. And Kate Hudson's very good in it.
Awesome. Is
This
it
is
like
very good.
Well,
This is good to know.
I'm imagining Greatest Showman hopes for a Christmas release with a lot of music in it and Hugh Jackman. Is that
definitely a different. I think it's a different audience because it's Neil Diamond, so there's I think the built-in audience skews a little older, but no, it's really fun and they're both really good in it. But I think Kate Hudson could be a contender for this because I think it's her best work since. I think it's her best work since Almost Famous. I'm going to say that right now. So, and hopefully they won't be mad that I
really hope we don't get in trouble
work.
for this because this is so exciting.
I had this written down for me because I felt because she was so prominent even though she didn't get an Emmy nomination, people really liked Running Point and it was so visible, and she was so visible throughout all of Emmy campaigning that I thought this could be like what if we get Kate Hudson in the Oscar race off of that goodwill from the Emmys? So that was one of the notes I wrote down. So this is
that
great.
I think that sets it up. She's had a weird kind of career. She's kind of gone. She went MIA for a while, I would say, and I feel like Knives Out. Her performance in that was so fun.
She's so good in that movie.
She's really good in it. She's kind of parroting what people assume she's like in real life, I think, which is always really fun. The other comp I think of is Anne Hathaway in Ocean's 8, which is a criminally great performance from her. So I think that this is going to be, I think this is kind of like, it feels like we're going to be talking about her as an actor again. And I'm really excited about that because she is so really good. And so,
and that movie's not on any festival lineups yet either, but feels very tip-coated to me. I wish it was there.
When I was sort of giving my feedback, I was like, this feels like a TIFF movie, but it also just, because it's a Christmas release, it feels like...
It's hard to do a Christmas release and bring it to a festival. I get that.
Yeah.
I did not expect Song Sung Blue to be where we kicked off this conversation, but that's very exciting. To go to Anemone...
Please, I hope I'm not in trouble next week.
We will apologize on your behalf. To start with Anemone, because we maybe know the least about it, I do keep wondering if it's going to show up somewhere, but, Ronan Day Lewis, son of Daniel Day, but Daniel Day Lewis being in a movie means we have to keep an eye out for it, right?
Yes. I mean, he's coming out of retirement for his kid, which I think is great. Yeah.
It is very sweet.
Exactly. Yeah. Did he come out before of retirement?
Well, he was like a cobbler before Gangs of New York. Like there was whenever he was a cobbler and people thought he'd never act again. I think it was around then.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure. Like you said, you cannot discount this movie because it's Daniel Day-Lewis. But I am not the fact that it has not been added to any of these festivals yet, which it could be a Telluride, I guess. Though it doesn't seem. I've not seen that whispered about as people are like kind of back of the napkin speculating on Telluride lineups. the release date being so close to so many of its focuses other big movies also throws me off, because I think it's set for October 3rd.
Yep.
And then Bugonia is October 24th. That doesn't necessarily mean anything bad, but I'm like, it just seems like I don't know what to expect. I'll hold a spot in my heart for Daniel Day-Lewis, but I don't have the highest of hopes that this will be like a major player. And I hope you play this back in 6 months when it wins Best Picture, and we could be like, what an idiot Chris was. I can't believe he thought Anemone was not even a contender. And now, but that's how I feel. Right. That's my gut right now, but it could be wrong.
That would be a relief for everyone else in the Best Actor race, which, as we've discussed, is very crowded. I'm sure George Clooney and The Rock and Timothée Chalamet are out there being like, please just stay out of it, Daniel Day-Lewis. Let me have this one.
Go back to retirement.
He's got 3 Oscars. He's good, I think. Okay, so we'll talk about Bugonia and Hamnet separately, but to start them kind of together, if you were making a Best Picture lineup, would you include both of them? Because I feel like you have to.
I could see an argument for neither or both or one of the two. I'm going to stick with one. I don't know which one, though, because I could see Bugonia really working or really not. We could talk about them separately, but I do think it's interesting that this is Chloe Zhao's basic Eternals. We could just put aside her basic follow-up to like Nomadland, which was Searchlight, like we said, a Best Picture winner. And Yorgos' last 2 movies before this were Searchlight movies as well, including Poor Things and The Favorite, and obviously Kinds of Kindness, which maybe we don't need to talk about that much, but the other 2 had like 20 Oscar nominations. So it's interesting that they've moved to Focus now, which I just maybe is another interesting note on the Searchlight conversation that we had too. I guess both of them could make it in. I have my doubts about Hamnet, frankly, just because, like Tyler, like you were saying, 2020 is such a weird outlier year. 2020, 21. Like, would Nomadland have popped in the way it did? We're kind of expecting this movie to be a great contender, and Chloe Zhao like is already in the club. Obviously, it's an Oscar winner, but maybe that was the year also in addition to Nomadland. Not to that Nomadland's not a good movie, but who knows how it would have played in a different year. And then Bugonia, Yorgos is so, like, without Tony McNamara, he's not as prominent with the Academy. And this is Will Tracy, who obviously wrote for Succession and The Menu. And I'm expecting this to be really good. But if it's more Kinds of Kindness, I don't know. So I guess both, maybe neither.
Both of them have the auteur streak that could make them in or out. And it could really go either way, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the sort of thing where, like, we have to see them first because, like, of course, we're going to consider them both as major frontrunners because of the auteurs behind them. And even with Bugonia, you have Emma Stone, and that partnership has obviously done very well for her. But yeah, we don't know what they are. So I think we just have to speculate until then. And I think once we see them, then we'll certainly know. Because I think, again, there's a lot this year. There's a lot of really big films. So I don't know if these get in just because, you know, the power of the directors and that sort of thing.
I feel so bullish on them. I did not expect to be out on a limb here. I mean, the Yorgos can go too weird thing, I think, is very believable. And we've talked about this a lot before. I'm sure we'll do it this year. The idea of something being too weird for the Oscars in a post-zone of interest world is a tough question. Like, you kind of never know what's going to hit. I think I'm passing on like 4th or 5th hand gossip, so do not take any of this as even being real. But I swear I heard someone say they talked to someone who had seen the movie and said Jesse Plemons is going to win Best Actor. So take that for what you will.
So this is what I was going to say is that we've seen, especially recently, it's sort of like the Emmys too. The movies that people watch, they like, and then they just vote for it down the line. Movies build up nominations in that way. Jessie Buckley for Hamnet and Jesse Plemons for Bugonia both feel like top 2 already Oscar contenders to win in their category. So if that is true, as we're expecting, sight unseen, like except for your friend of a friend of a friend who saw Ferris at 31 Flavors or whatever, we have to consider these movies very greatly. But like Tyler's saying, there's so many auteurs. I do wonder, will we see a situation where, like, it seems unlikely because of the directors involved, but is Bugonia or Hamnet, do they both get in Best Picture, but then the directors miss because there's so many other directors? You can go 10 deep, 15 deep on director, and then maybe they don't get in. I don't know. It's very tricky. But the performances, assuming those are good, those actors, Jessie Buckley and Jesse Plemons, feel both primed to be Oscar nominees and potential winners at this point in their careers.
Yeah. But, I think kind of comps of movies that like missed the mark in recent years that I kind of think of at the same level because of the directors behind them were Blitz from Steve McQueen, which really just kind of did not make a splash with anyone. I loved it, but it just didn't really. I loved
Blitz so much,
yeah.
and I'll be mad about it forever.
Similarly, Empire of Light, and which you have Sam Mendes and Olivia Colman, Roger Deakins. I mean, just that also kind of just like fell flat with people.
Yeah.
And they're both, those two movies, like on paper, are like just Oscar, they have Oscar bait written all over them, very British films. And so, I don't know, like Hamnet kind of has, with the exception of Chloe's attachment, has a very like, it's Shakespeare. So it's like, it just feels like a 90s, kind of... I don't know, like a 90s project, and like that you would just assume would like get placed in there. So I don't know.
It's like just does feel
the vibes have changed.
I read the book Hamnet, which I just loved, and I think probably makes me so bullish on it because it is Shakespeare adjacent. It's about Shakespeare's family life. Hamnet is the name of his son who died of the plague when he was 11. It's really much more about his wife. Like Jessie Buckley would very clearly be the lead of this, and it's so much more about like walking the moors and finding medicinal plants and thinking about house life and, all this detail about the world of it. It does feel kind of like a, this is very complex. It's the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead of Shakespeare in Love.
Nice.
Where she's at home wondering what Shakespeare's up to.
This is great.
They can put that on their marketing materials. They're welcome to.
that's a great tagline.
The emotional pull of that movie, like it's very sad, obviously, but it's also just about this marriage and this woman. And I think that Nomadland had that power too. Like Nomadland had this, austere beauty to it, but there was a real deep heart to it, which is what made it win Best Picture. And I think Hamnet could really have a lot of that too, which is why I feel so high on it.
But I mean, yeah, it does definitely feel like a Best Actress, like that she would be a major frontrunner. Like even if it doesn't land in other categories, it feels like she is gonna get in there.
Well, yeah, actress is interesting. And Chris, I think we've talked about this a little bit where you've got things like Die My Love, which is, probably a just for her kind of contender. Or If I Had Legs, I Could Kick You. Like a lot of like women in movies that might not get otherwise noticed, which is a trend the Oscars have gotten away from. It used to be way more common. But that would make, if Hamnet is an across the board contender, then that makes Jessie Buckley way stronger in that way.
Yeah, I feel like that is a trend that we would probably easily fall back into because I feel like last year really bucked it because, all five, it was all five actress nominees were like from the Best Picture. And Honora being like the title character.
In quite a long time.
I mean, I had assigned basically a trend piece about this, about how, Best Actress always goes to some random film, that otherwise
close
is
for the wife, but except it
didn't. But Judy, or still Alice. So it's been I think the last two winners I guess have really bucked that trend. But well, it's like there's two trends that we have to keep an eye on. So there's the Oscar trend of like the lone nominees are so much less common. Like it's just fewer titles that get nominated in general. But then again, everyone's anti-DEI, so we just don't want movies with women anymore. So who knows which one's going to be. And of course, the other one that I always point out is that directors win screenplay. Except for last year, but mostly directors win screenplay. I think Conclave was like the second in 10 years.
Yes, that's right.
Across the two, where it just went to a writer and not a director or directing team.
Yeah, and I feel like writers really hate that, so that'd be a good trend to change.
See if they can, keep them out.
We can wrap up, I think, with Sony Pictures Classics, which, as I said, like often we'll have like smaller movies in this. They kind of have their really specific thing that they do, and they do it really, really well. And so they're never going to put out something as big as Hamnet or Bugonia, I think. But they're also not going to put out like the tiny releases that like maybe Bleecker Street would do. Like they have their really sweet spot, and it feels like they've got a lot of stuff right in that sweet spot this year. But in general, like I think we all know amongst ourselves like what it means to pull a Sony Pictures Classics in an Oscar race. But does one of you want to take a stab at what that means exactly and why it keeps working for them?
Chris, you want to take that one? I feel like
they're just great at getting their movies in front of the voters. Incredible ways of doing that. And like you were saying, Katey, targeting the right campaigns, typically older actors or actors who they know they could get in and create passion around those performances. Obviously, Fernando Torres last year was a sensation. And then also they got I'm Still Here in for Best Picture and International, and it won that. But even like the year before, like Bill Nye for Living, you could go Penelope Cruz for Parallel Mothers, right? Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory. You just go down the line. They are very, very good at this. And we know that they think about it like that and try to get to the voters. Like basically every voter should watch our movies. And last year they had on paper a really strong slate that ended up not totally working out. They had, Room Next Door, right? Pedro Almodovar movie, which did not totally work. Obviously I'm Still Here did, so that worked. This year I'll be curious to see just in terms of like you're saying, Katey, they don't have a lot right now, but I do think they have very mobilizable, targeted campaigns that they could easily manifest Oscar nominations for in terms of June Squibb for Eleanor the Great and Andrew Scott for Blue Moon. Those would be my already. I'm like, I think while lone nominees are not as popular, Sony Classics does seemingly do that sort of basically, where it's like, oh, we could get like 1 or 2 nominations for these movies and then they're there. So I'm always bullish on Sony. It's great. They're just the best. They're still the best at this in terms of like targeting these campaigns and getting like unlikely Oscar nominations.
Yeah, I mean, Blue Moon is interesting, especially because of the Linklater Netflix connection. I think that Nouveau Vague is going to be an interesting campaign for Netflix already. But I'm very curious to see how much Linklater campaigns at all, because he's not really that kind of director. Boyhood's really the only thing he was nominated for directing and even like got that kind of attention for. So, and that's always interesting when you have a director who's split between 2 studios in the same year. Last year we had Luca, and I feel like that was tough on both challengers and queer. Like to see, Katey, I think you wrote about this, like the entire creative team for both films, like were just sort of like being pulled in between 2 different studios, and neither of them really got them in there. And so I would be curious how Blue Moon and Nouveau Vague really strike each other out. Especially because, I think Nouveau Vague is a very niche film. I'm really excited about it as someone who knows and loves Breathless. But, when you stack it up against the rest of Netflix's stuff, that one feels like the hardest to pull off as a campaign.
Well, Netflix just has like, gigantic auteur movies. Not that Richard Linklater isn't a gigantic auteur, but letting it fall behind the Guillermo del Toro, the Catherine Bigelow, the Noah Baumbach seems really easy to happen. Whereas Sony Classics doesn't have that problem. So that gives you an edge to Blue Moon.
Yeah, and like as Chris said, I think Eleanor the Great is really a campaign for June Squibb, who is beloved and is always game. I mean, last year during the Thelma campaign, I did 2 Q&As with her, and she's a force. I mean, it's really impressive.
Unbelievable.
She's so sharp.
Her and Scarlett Johansson presenting at the Oscars were incredible together.
Yeah. So I think that they will be fun together. But, I've heard mixed things about the film itself, so I don't know how far that's going to go. And then in terms of like more than, the lone nominee, like maybe Nuremberg, because it just feels like a bigger, heavier Oscar film.
Yeah, I mean, we should talk about Nuremberg because it has this like incredible on paper Oscar thing to it, where it's about the Nuremberg trials. It's Russell Crowe, Rami Malek, Michael Shannon, but then I think Richard E. Grant's in there. Like it's this huge cast of all these people. Obviously, there was judgment at Nuremberg as like an Oscar predecessor, but then realizing that it's written and directed by James Vanderbilt, who wrote Zodiac, but also a bunch of other movies nobody really likes. And he had this movie, a Sony Pictures Classics release at TIFF about 10 years ago about the 60-minute scandal called Truth. That's what it's called, Truth?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which would just had all of that on paper stuff and just kind of came and went so fast. So it's really hard to know which way Nuremberg might tip.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys got to watch it today, but they released a teaser as we're recording this today.
For Nuremberg?
For Nuremberg. And
wait, like since we've been on this call?
No. A little before we got on the call.
All right, I totally missed it.
It's totally fine. And it looks... My expectations were slightly dialed down based on the trailer in terms of its awards bona fides. But I do think, obviously, like we're saying, like the idea of the movie is strong and everyone in it is strong on paper. So we'll see how it plays at TIFF. The other thing with these and all of these kind of mini whatever we want, what are we calling them? Like studio indies,
indie labels,
whatever.
yeah.
Studio Light.
Yeah.
Studio Light. They all have these kind of movies that are like going to be audience plays in theory, right? And then also that could subsidize the movies that are not necessarily audience plays. This could maybe be for Sony Classics. I'm sure more people would see a Nuremberg movie than, no disrespect to Blue Moon, than Rodgers and Hart movie, right? So I do think there's something to this on their schedule as, hey, this is going to be a big picture. But though I'm sure if we talk to like Sony Pictures Classics, they would say this could be an across the board Oscar player because of how timely it will feel, and like if it could harness that political in the atmosphere. Then
it's
maybe
the
it goes
conclave,
all
right? Like they want the conclave move for this year, which like seems, if it's good, like why not? Like all the people who loved it. I do want to flag that they also have the Choral, which is going to be at Toronto, and I think I didn't really know it existed until it was on the TIFF lineup, but it just sounds like the most Sony Pictures Classics release. Like it's by Nicholas Heitner, who directed History Boys. It's Ray Fiennes, and who is the other big actor in it? It's just got like a really prestige British cast about a chorus in England period piece. It seems perfect.
Yeah, I haven't heard Nicholas Heitner's name in years, so I'm like, oh, he's back. But yeah, I mean, that's a very like, yeah, as you say, like kind of, I don't want to say literary, but it's like very, he's a theater director, and he comes from the theater, and like History Boys was like just a big old theater adaptation with the entire original cast. I think of him to speak about Daniel Day-Lewis again. He did The Crucible. That's sort of like the last thing I really remember him doing. So, and again, another play adaptation. So yeah, I don't really know anything about The Choral, but yeah, I mean, we'll see, I guess. Are all these other undated that you have on your list? Those are all
everything.
Sony Pictures?
So
okay.
There's a lot of international films that are still undated, and then there's A Private Life, which Jodie Foster is in, which was at Cannes. So it's unclear what's going to come out this year. But again, as we learned from I'm Still Here, which is a movie that was really not on my radar at all until Toronto. Like you never know which of these might really pop when the moment is right.
Yeah, and like, because the international vote is the swing state, basically, as I describe it. Like, I'm very curious, like, if we're going to see, like, foreign language titles in the Best Picture race, other than Nouveau Vague, which, still is an American film, really.
Sure, but I think
French,
they're trying to get that as the French submission, aren't they?
Are they?
I don't know. Is there another movie that I'm thinking of? It'd be very interesting. I mean, France is always such an X factor in terms of what they're willing to actually submit.
I would be surprised if France allowed that to happen. That feels like they would be like, absolutely not.
Well,
but we did have Emilia Perez last year. So.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like if Emilia Perez can happen, then why not Nouvelle Vague? But we'll see. They also might shoot themselves in the foot and pick this year's The Taste of Things. Thank you.
Yeah, just another French countryside kitchen movie.
Katie, when we started this, you were like, oh, it's amazing that Focus has never won Best Picture, and that Original Sin is Brokeback Mountain losing to Crash, which is now in its hit the 20th anniversary. This year,
Oscar season.
At this Oscar. So what better way to end that curse would be if it was like we were writing a screenplay about this. One of these Focus movies should technically win Best Picture this year, right? To break the curse. And so then is that going to be Hamnet, Bugonia, or A Song Sung Blue maybe at this point? Who knows?
Well, what is the crash of this year then? Like what is the like a Lionsgate
I am not going to. We will really get in trouble if we name what the crash is going to be. Are you kidding me?
Katie, say that for the
emails we're all going to get.
Party.
Yeah, exactly.
Which of these movies on paper that we haven't seen are the crash of this year? That is an after party.
Oh my
Future
God.
after party.
I would not live that one down.
But it would be nice if Focus finally won a Best Picture, I think, for sure. And this is definitely its strong. I mean, Conclave accepted, like we said. I think Conclave obviously was probably the runner-up to Anora and could have won Best Picture in another year. Maybe they do break through this year with one of these, and that would be pretty cool. I mean, on paper, those two are very strong movies at this point.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I feel like those are the two like Best Picture contenders. I feel like because as you say, like I love the Phoenician Scheme, and it felt like. His last two films to me were the ones that felt like a return to form in a way, but they're too cartoonish. He kind of won for his first big cartoon, live action cartoon with, or didn't win, but like got the attention for, you know, all the nominations
he now has a short film Oscar for Henry Sugar too. So
that's true.
It's, Wes Anderson's Oscar career always seems like this is going to be strange in some way.
Yeah,
and
but that feels like that was like the Netflix win. You know, he didn't even show up.
I know.
So, yeah.
Well, I feel like this is a good spot to wrap this up. Tyler, we'll obviously have you back throughout the season to see how right or wrong we got any of these predictions. So thank you for coming and putting all these on the record. And in 6 months, we'll ask you what you do think the crash of this season is. So,
yeah, when we're all allowed to talk about it, we can finally be honest on the record.
We'll be back in a moment with my conversation with Stephen Graham about Adolescence. Let's hear my conversation with Stephen Graham. He has received 2 Emmy nominations this year for both writing and starring in the Netflix limited series Adolescence. You probably don't need me to tell you what Adolescence is. It's the 4-part series, each episode captured in a single take, was a huge breakout sensation this spring, and it's really the prohibitive favorite in a lot of Emmy categories too. And you probably already knew who Stephen Graham was before Adolescence, even if you didn't necessarily realize it. He's had major roles on Boardwalk Empire and in movies like The Irishman in the US, and he's been a prolific force in British television for years as well, including a lot of projects with people he went on to work with on Adolescence. He and I had a really lovely conversation about how all of those previous collaborations led to Adolescence, including knowing his co-writer Jack Thorne and the show's director Philip Barantini from previous work together, and how they got that unwavering confidence that they could pull off the single-take structure of Adolescence. We also talked about how they managed to bring the show to Netflix when Amazon passed on it, and some theories on why he thinks the show has been such a hit everywhere, although of course he's modest, so he might not be the best person to even know. It's a phenomenon to him as well. I really loved talking to Stephen Graham. I think you'll love listening to it. Let's hear my conversation with the creator, writer, star of Adolescence, Stephen Graham. So you're in production now. You're doing makeup tests for the next thing?
Yes, yeah, we just had discussions about covering some of my tattoos and adding tattoos for the character.
Are you allowed to tell me what it is that you're working on?
It's an Apple show with the wonderful director who I have worked with for long time now, Tim Van Patten.
Okay. Oh yeah, legend.
And it's written by the marvelous Rowan Jaffrey.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
He's wrote it. And it's really interesting, really intriguing. Set in Pittsburgh. So I have also been in the process of mastering my Pittsburgh accent.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's very specific.
Yes, they say downtown.
Yins.
Yeah, Jens.
Yeah.
And the Stillers. They used to be in the still mills.
You're getting there.
Take a bit of time, but it's coming. Yeah.
You've been talking about Adolescence for such a long time, obviously, but now you've got to get into something new. Is it weird having your head in both places, having to kind of live in both worlds?
One I'm excited about doing and can't wait to get my teeth into, do you know what I mean? And get to play and have some fun and I kind of get ready to dive into a new character. And the other one is like my child that went to school, had a wonderful time, is now, they went to college, they went to university, then now is all fully grown, and I just look back on it reflecting. Yeah, it's wonderful. But to me, if I'm really honest with you, Katey, as well, that whole kind of, look, and the nominations, it's a wonderful honor, it's a huge honor. But for me personally, it's the fact that every single one of us, the recognition across the board, do you know what I mean? Because it's very much an ensemble piece. It really was a true ensemble piece in many ways. And for every single one of us to be recognized in the acting sense the way we have been, and for Phil, obviously, for the directing completely, because it was just a wonderful, it's a wonderfully directed piece, but it was the collaboration within all of us, do you know what I mean? And for Matt to be acknowledged, for Matt, our DOP, Matt Lewis, who was genius and wonderful. but us all to be acknowledged in that respect really feels like, you know, the team that we were. Because it's not, this particular one, definitely, it's not a game of golf.
Mm-hmm.
I say that often, that's my catchphrase now, do you know what I mean? And it's not a game of golf, it's a real team effort. And for this one in particular, I'm proud of all of the work I've done. I feel very blessed. But for this one, it's just a true ensemble. And for Christine to be acknowledged, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Owen to be acknowledged. Erin's a genius anyway. I think Erin is a powerhouse. And Ashley to have that acknowledgement as well is an absolute joy. Just makes my heart sing, to be honest with you. Do you know what I mean? Really.
Yeah. Yeah, not to be asking you to pick a favorite child or anything, but was there any of those nominations where you said, oh, thank goodness they noticed that? Like maybe you didn't know if they would realize how impressive that work was.
That's a great question. And yes, it's a very simple answer for me personally. Christine and Ashley.
Yeah.
Two to be picked out. Do you know what I mean? It means the world. It really does. Especially somebody like Christine. Do you know what I mean? Who I've known since we were kids.
Wow.
Our parents were friends. Do you know what I mean? My mum and him were really close mates growing up as kids, and we're from the same area together. So for her to have that acknowledgement, do you know what I mean? And for her to be able to stand and stand in the sunlight and be truly seen for her talent and her beautiful ability to play the human emotion and the human condition amazingly. Do you know what I mean? For her to get that recognition to me means the world. It really does.
So if the show is your child and you've been watching it grow up, are the Emmys then kind of like the wedding where you get to dress up and celebrate your child having grown up?
Yeah. Right. You're dead right. It means all the family get dressed up. And I'm in the process of, because one, consciously thinking about the environment and the planet. Also, two, just for the sheer fun of it. I thought, oh wow, and then I was like, oh, so there's 13 of us. That's a lot of cars taking actors to it. So I want to get us a minibus, and not a minibus, a double-decker bus. I want to get a double-decker bus.
Oh, like a London double-decker bus?
Yeah, like a London double-decker bus. That's what I want to get. So we can all go on the bus together. And do you know what that does as well? For me, the romanticism of that is when I was a kid, when I was in my teens, and I first went to drama group in town in Liverpool. I went to the Everyman Youth Theatre. And I used to get in a bus to the youth theatre. So what a better way to honour that whole kind of thing of getting on the bus where I used to get on the bus and go to the youth theatre. And now I'm getting on the bus to go to a big, glittery, shiny, beautiful, bright awards show. Do you know what I mean? With the team.
Yeah. Well, it's also like the British invasion, right? You know, you're all bringing the UK talent over there and saying, we haven't lost track of who we are. This is, we haven't gone Hollywood.
No, we'll turn up on a bus, and I really want to make that happen. That's my aim, to make it happen.
I would love to see that. I feel like Netflix at this point, they should want to make you happy with that.
Yeah, I think we'll make it happen.
Well, the amount of long-term relationships that go into Adolescence, you were talking to Christine, I spoke to Erin, about you guys working together. And then you and Philip Barantini, I hadn't realized until just recently that you'd been actors together before he was ever a director. And it sounded like the two of you have been saying, we can do this kind of single take real-time thing for a really long time, like before Boiling Point, before, anything that made it to television. Like, how long has that been an idea that the two of you have been kicking around?
What happened was originally it was, and this is the beauty of that kind of serendipity and that kind of what you give out, you get back. Do you know what I mean? In a karmic sense, let's say, for instance. But Phil was struggling for a while, and he really had a change of heart. The acting wasn't going. He wasn't getting many interviews, and he wasn't getting many jobs. Do you know what I mean? So he kind of had a big change of heart, and he just had this urge and this desire to direct. And he said, I really want to direct. I'm going to do a short film. I was like, okay. Long story short, I said to him, go and make your first one, because he said, will you be in it? And I said, go and make your first one and then come back to me. And he was like, oh, okay. So, and it was only because the lad who wrote it, Robbie, who was the main character, he wrote it, and Robbie was a boxer, and Robbie is a boxer. It was a really nice, beautifully shot little film, actually, about a conversation with a boxer and a psychiatrist. And he wanted me to play the trainer. But Robbie had his own trainer, so I said, just use the trainer.
Sure.
He's like, really? I went, yeah, because the trainer will know what he's doing, and he'll have a great face. So anyway, he did that. And then he come back and he said, look, me and this lad I've met called Matt, who's recently finished university. I've got this idea to do a short film all done in one shot, set in a restaurant, about a chef. And I was like, okay. And he went, I'd really love you to do it. And I was like, sounds great. I went, okay, let me speak to Hannah. And me and Hannah talked about it, and she was like, okay, well, we could do that. That'd be easily achievable. Do you know what I mean?
So to come on as producing it, like that's what you and Hannah were talking about.
Be involved from the very beginning of all of us together as a little collaboration.
Yeah.
And so he said, I'll need 5 days. And I said, well, I'll give you 3. Well, so what we did was then, we came up with that little process, and I'll never forget it. We worked it out together. A lot of the cast, we had like friends and actors who we've known, do you know what I mean, for a long time. So we put this little ragtag bunch of people together, and we made this little short, and it was just really supposed to be a calling card to show what Phil was capable of doing.
Yeah.
We literally, and that's how we worked out how to do it in the premise, with like a basic kind of story plan. But then on top of that, just taking it piece by piece, minutely, and improvising little bits and working on bits and working on the piece where you build it and you build it and you build it. And also that beautiful kind of, Matt developed this wonderful technique of how he was going to shoot it. So that was kind of how it worked. And I gave that to Jane, my agent. I said, look, I think this is really good. And she was like, really? I went, yeah, that's why I wanted to do it, to help her mate out. She was like, I told you, I'm sick of you helping friends. We're not doing that anymore. But Jane, it's me. It's what I do. So anyway, I went, can you show it around the office and see if anyone likes it? And she was like, okay. Literally within an hour back, Kate, I swear to God, Katie, she phoned me back. She went, this is fantastic. I went, I told you.
You said, see? Yeah.
Like, no, it's really brilliant. And I'm like, yeah. And then so she showed it around the office, and within a day, Phil had an agent.
Wow.
And his agent said, why don't you make a feature? So we did. And we made Boiling Point the feature, which
sure.
All of a sudden, that was a really small, low-budget independent film. And the next minute was sat at the BAFTAs. It's up for Best Film. Phil was up for Best British Director. I was up for Best Actor alongside Leonardo DiCaprio and Benedict Cumberbatch and Will Smith. And we were all sat there together on the front row, just kind of looking around going, wow, okay. So it just shows you kind of what happened. So we had a wonderful proof of concept. And then the next step was Adolescence.
Yeah.
And that, I think everybody kind of knows the story, but that came on board through Plan B. Brad had watched it, and so had Jeremy. And Jeremy got in touch with Phil and said, look, I really think this was brilliant. We'd love to do something with you and Stephen in a television sense.
Yeah.
And then Phil said to me, would you be interested? Should we do something? And I was like, yeah, okay. And then the idea and the concept came about. So technically, all in all, I think it was like 7 years or 6 years before we got to Adolescence when we did the short. So it all began with that little embryonic stage of the short, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And did you and Phil leave Boiling Point saying like, okay, we pulled that off, but I think we can take this even further, and knowing you could kind of expand it into that technique-wise into something like Adolescence?
No, not at all. It was just kind of like, we put it out there into the ether, let it be what it was. So it was the idea of like taking that format and making it into a TV show. That was the next step. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that wasn't our idea. That was something that Jeremy thought of, because they wanted to develop something for television, and they thought it'd be a great opportunity. But originally, I think they wanted to do it about one character and like 8 episodes. And that's when I went, I don't want to do that. I want to do something completely different.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I had this little idea which just hit me like a bolt of lightning. And then I was like, Jack Thorne's the only person that can write this.
Yeah.
Because I love Jack, and I've done like 6 jobs, I think, with Jack.
Yeah.
And I think Jack writes the human condition so beautifully. And so I approached Jack and said, Jack, I've got this idea. Would you be interested? And he said, explain it to me. I explained this little kind of disjointed little jigsaw puzzle of 4 pieces. And he went, okay, I'll do it on one condition. And I was like, yeah, what's that? And he went, as long as you write it with me.
Yeah.
And then I was like, Jack, I don't know how to. And he was like, trust me, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
You'll be great. So, yeah, that was how it came about. And then cut to, this situation that we're in now, which is unbelievable.
Double-decker bus at the Emmys.
That's my plan. Yeah.
I want to hear more about your agent saying that she's sick of you helping your friends, and you saying that's just what I do. Has that just always been the way that you do it? You're bringing people up with you. You're gathering your people around you as much as you can. How have you made that work? Because it can, if you're picking the wrong people, it could tank your career. But clearly, it's working the opposite for you.
Of course, if you pick the wrong people, do you know what I mean? But in the same respect, it's that kind of. My wife Hannah is we're both kids from working class backgrounds, you know what I mean, and we found it was really difficult for us to find opportunities to get into our industry, but it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of determination, and you need skin like a rhino, and then the philosophy has always kind of been, from my side of it, you only keep what you have by giving it away. Do you know what I mean? So it's that kind of trying to help nurture opportunities for people, both in front and behind the camera. And then in the same respect, you gather, you attract the same tribe, people that have that same kind of ethos as well. Do you know what I mean? And then that's where it was so important for us to have Mark on board, Mark Herbert from War. Do you know what I mean? And Emily. It was so important that they were the only people I knew that could really help get this off the ground as well. With boots on the ground, kind of, could create the infrastructure and have that kind of, they had that wonderful kind of sensibility of anything is possible. Do you know what I mean? We needed that great team. You need to surround yourself with a great team. You have to. You have to. It's imperative. And so with War being on board, me and Hannah learned so much from them. Hannah learned so much. And then we got Joe Johnson, who we also worked with on 1,000 Blows to be our series producer, because I know she's just a wonderful woman and she can make anything happen. Do you know what I mean? And she cares and she has a lot of love for the project that she's doing. So you infuse these people with the confidence and just to allow them to shine. Same as Christine in respects, to go back to that. It's
sure.
Come on, we can do this. We'll do this as a team, and each member is as important as the next. You know what I mean? As an individual, we're not really that much, but as a collective, we're very powerful. So it's always been that kind of philosophy and that ideology. And then you get someone wonderful who I've known for a while, and we've worked with before. Someone like Shaheen Beg, our amazing casting director. Phil sits down with Shaheen and has a long conversation, and we all have a long conversation about what we're trying to find in this young lad, in this young. We needed a 13-year-old boy whom we didn't want someone who had lots of experience in the industry, so they couldn't be slightly tainted by the industry. But yeah, if you look at it, we're asking to find someone who could basically recite a play. On their very first crack at any kind of acting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
In that sense, it's kind of bringing the people in that you just see that natural ability and that talent, and you give them an opportunity and you try and create an opportunity for people.
Yeah.
And that's how they shine.
I mean, building a show around a 13-year-old character, like you're saying, and just the subject matter in general, like, you talk about storytelling that's risky and, being willing to take a gamble. And there's the story of how this was going to be an Amazon show. It didn't work out. You kind of had to scramble. But as you continued pitching and building the show, how did you sell anybody on saying it sounds really dark, but it's worth it, or it sounds really risky, but here's how it's going to pay off? Like, how did you learn what was the thing that would get everyone to say, okay, I'm going to take this risk with these guys?
Hannah straight away from the very beginning said what we need to do is we need to not lose focus of what we're doing and what we're telling. We're telling a story, and our main thing is to try and create conversation. That was it. But in the same respect, we made a little tiny, and it still does seem like this was just our little tiny thing. Do you know what I mean? And I think it was because of one, where we set it. We set it in a place, Pontefract, up north. Do you know what I mean? There's this great little kind of working town village kind of area. But it was also that kind of staying true to the identity of the story that we were telling. And in that respect, we had, Mona and Toby are amazing execs at and Netflix were absolutely fantastic, and they guided us. It was the best marriage we could have ever had.
Yeah.
You said that it was on Amazon, yes, and there was a point where it was at Amazon. But again, I go back to that serendipity and karma and fate being what it will be, and it's the path of the Tao. And we were meant to be with Netflix because it was just the perfect marriage. They guided us in the right direction, but more importantly, they trusted our vision. Do you know what I mean? And Jack is exceptionally eloquent, and Jack is exceptionally passionate, and so is Phil. Phil's exceptionally passionate about what he does. Hannah's exceptionally passionate. Mark's exceptionally passionate. We had a whole bunch of passionate people who really wanted to tell this story, and we knew it was going to be a difficult watch.
Mm-hmm.
All we could do was try and play it truthfully and as authentically as possible. Do you know what I mean?
And make it really specific. Netflix is a global platform, like all these streamers are, and you want your show to be seen around the world. You maybe don't expect it to be as big as this, but it doesn't ever seem like there's any point where you said, oh, we have to make this more universally relatable. It's like you made it as specific as possible, and that made it universal, which doesn't feel intuitive, but I think is why it works.
That's the key as well. You're bang on the money. There was no and that's what I'm saying about would it being this small little. It was our small little thing, and we made it still being the small little thing. Our attention to detail in that specific area was perfect. You know what I mean? And it's a small theme, and it's a small thing, but as you say, it has those universal qualities to it, in the fact that we are, we can all relate in some way to what is happening, or we can try to sympathize or empathize with one of the characters. It was a human story. Do you know what I mean? It was a story that we could all, and that was the other thing at the very beginning. We made a conscious decision. I remember me and Jack right at the very beginning, and I said to Jack, look, we're not blaming anyone. We're not pointing the finger, but maybe, and I've said this before, I've said this often, maybe we're all accountable in some way. Maybe society is accountable. Maybe the government is accountable. Maybe the school is accountable. The parents are accountable. Do you know what I mean? And then on top of that, something which I never had, is the internet.
Yeah.
The internet is accountable hugely. But we were never pointing fingers at anyone specifically. And it all came, it came from real incidents. Do you know what I mean? It was a story that came from truth, from elements of truth. And I think it caught the zeitgeist. Because as you say, we were meticulous in the story that we were telling, and we were true to the story that we told. And we told that story, and then it kind of, like those old beautiful fables, they're universal.
Mm-hmm.
The story of a young boy who was lost, and we never pointed and said, this is why he was lost. We just said, why do you think this happened?
Yeah.
These are the facts that we're putting out in front of you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know how much time you've spent thinking about the difference between like TV versions of a story versus film. I think you said you imagine this as a film that became a series, but I have wondered with Adolescence if, you hear about the subject matter, you hear that it's long and ambitious, and it sometimes feels like a movie version of it, people would say, oh, that's too tough. But a show, for some reason, people are willing to take the gamble more. Have you thought about this? And if it's the format somehow that as television that made this story pop in the way that it did and lets people kind of buy in, even if it sounds too sad?
That's a great question. That's the question. I think as well with what we told and the story that we were telling, conventionally, if we were to make it conventionally, then you possibly could have made it a film. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because of the format that we were using, we always knew that it had to be in certain parts. And because I had the idea straight away, and when I had the idea, I knew it was in 4 acts. I just knew it had to be.
Yeah, you said 4 from the very, very beginning, right?
Yeah, I knew it was in 4 acts, and that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to grab the audience straight away and come into the house and grab the audience by arresting this 13-year-old boy and thinking, what's gone wrong?
Yeah.
And this is what I said to Jack, straight away. I said, and we find out he's done it at the end. And Jack was like, really? I was like, yeah. He's like, but that breaks all conventions. I went, I know, we're not being conventional.
Mm-hmm.
We find out he's done it, and then we're going to piece together as we're going to show you certain things, and you're going to ask the questions why. But I think as well, what happened with it, a lot of people binged it in one go.
Yeah.
it's like 4 hours worth of television. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah, but people do that. They will watch 4 hours of TV and would never watch Lords of Arabia. It's a strange thing.
Exactly. And I think that's the shift now. And we have to appreciate, we have to understand that with this medium, we do now have the opportunity to tell long stories, should we say, do you know what I mean? But beautiful stories and truthful stories. And I think as long as we keep the authenticity, and hopefully what this has done in many ways is shown people, wherever you may be, and whatever area you're from, or whatever walk of life you're from, that it is feasible and it is possible to be able to tell a truthful, authentic story that will resonate. Do you know what I mean? And you're right. I love what you said. And that's one of the things I've always said. We never made it to be successful. We never went, oh, pander to this, or what about the, no disrespect, and I mean it, no disrespect at all. We didn't listen to no algorithm bullshit. You know what I mean? And thankfully, we didn't have anybody telling us some algorithm bullshit. Thank God we didn't have that. That's why I say the marriage that we had with Netflix was beautiful, and it remains to be so. They were and they are our perfect partners in this journey. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because someone at Netflix was looking at the algorithm, but they didn't tell you about it. So it sounds like perfect.
Maybe, I don't know, but nobody said. We didn't have to, because, and I'll be completely honest. I'll be transparent. There's many a meeting that you have where you have to pander now to these kind of algorithms, and as an artist, I think it makes me kind of think, well, why? That doesn't make any sense, because to me it doesn't make any sense. But there's certain things now, there's formats. Well, if we have this, and this, and everybody's looking for this perfect recipe, whereas we showed you, if you just break some eggs and throw them in a pan and whisk them about, it'll be fluffy and delicious. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, that's what can happen. Well, it doesn't need to be inch, pinch, and measured, specific, and listening to these algorithms. It was just something that we caught, and that's the joy of it, I think, in many ways. Yeah.
Well, you make a show not to be successful, but then when it is successful, then the next thing has to happen. And, you and Jack have been kind of, hinting that you would want to work together without confirming anything. But how do you follow it up? How do you figure out how to presumably want to make something again as if it won't be successful? You want to repeat the same thing, but is it harder once you've, seen what something can do?
You're right. But then in the same respect, we should go into it from the same way we went into it the first time. Yeah. Not to make something spectacular, not trying to make something that we're trying to appeal to so many different types of people, and just to try and find a story, a really interesting story, and tell it as honestly and as truthful as possible. And hopefully, again, people will watch it. People will come and people will be, one, entertained by it, and two, it'll make people think.
Yeah. And if they didn't mess with you on the algorithm the first time, hopefully now nobody, they'll know you don't need it.
Hopefully not, yeah.
To ask one more Emmy question before we wrap up, I know you've worked with Colin Farrell before. You guys are up against each other now in the same category. Is there a rivalry that's going to spark between now and the Emmys? Is a friendly handshake on the red carpet something there?
So I adore Colin. I think he's a beautiful human being. He's an absolutely beautiful human being, and one of the finest actors I've ever seen. Do you know what I mean? And one of the best actors I've ever worked with. And he's a wonderful, wonderful man, and he's an absolute gentleman. So it's an honor to be nominated with him as well.
Well, I also love that Martin Scorsese, not in the same category, is also nominated for acting, and he's directed you, obviously. Like, who would have ever expected that would come around in your life?
Hey, he's nominated for
the studio, for playing himself on the studio.
Yes, playing himself, yeah.
I mean, he's a great actor, so I feel like it's a long overdue recognition for him.
Yeah, he is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Stephen. I know you've got, production to get to. You got a Pittsburgh accent to master. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk about it. That does it for today's episode. Again, a reminder, join us at Prestige Junkie After Party for so much more where this came from, special bonus episodes, video, content, and much more. This podcast is edited by Brett Fuchs and produced by Brett Fuchs and me. Our theme music is by Dave Gonzalez. Thanks again to our guest co-host, Tyler Coates. Subscribe to the Prestige Junkie newsletter at theankler.com. Subscribe to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And go to prestigejunkie.afterparty.substack.com for much more. We will see you next week.